Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to the balcony. I know we were just out here the other day, but changes are on the horizon. We need to talk about them and I want to get it out of the way before we get the day started. So we're here chatting about, as I'm sure you've guessed by now, Walt Disney World Lightning Lane, and ultimately the changes coming to Genie Plus. Now look, this is one of those topics that I'm sure you've already heard a little bit about because it was announced a couple days ago that Disney was going to be rebranding Genie Plus, but I wanted to sit down and chat with you about it. I want to give you the information that you want and need to know, the resources that you need to get info straight from the horse's mouth, and I want to share some of my thoughts as well, and the way that we normally do share thoughts. You know, no BS, no drama. Just giving you the information you need to know, as per usual, so that you can have a fantastic trip. But look, you know the drill. I've got a coffee. It's hazelnut, by the way. It's delicious, and it's half gone. So, yeah, it happens. I've also got some notes here so that we can stay on target and get you all the information that you're looking for. Now it's your turn. Grab something delicious to sip on, get comfy, and let's dig into this topic. So like I said, a couple days ago, Disney announced that they were going to be rebranding Genie Plus, which is their skip the line service here at the Walt Disney World Resort. Now, along with rebranding it, giving it a new name and titling things differently, they're also changing the way that the system works a little bit. These changes, while they are big and they're going to have a major impact on how some of you experience this service and experience the parks, it's not anything to be worried about. It's not anything to be scared of. In fact, it might even be familiar to some of you. But look, before we dig into the changes that we can expect to see, let's talk a little bit about the current system that is going away here come July. You know, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. So, currently what we have at the Walt Disney World Resort right now is called Genie Plus. We also have something called individual Lightning Lane selections. Genie Plus is a paid skip the line service that allows guests to purchase it same day and make selections one at a time for attractions that they would like to ride while skipping the line. When selecting what attraction you want to skip the line for, you're given the next available time slot. So in essence, no prior planning and you can't choose when you want to ride what. Now, an individual Lightning Lane selection, which is a mouthful and not a really great name, are separate purchases from Genie Plus. It allows guests to purchase the ability to skip the line for specific attractions. Usually these are the most popular attractions. Unlike with Genie Plus, guests can choose what time they want to ride that attraction, but similar to Genie Plus, it is still same day. So no prior planning, but you can choose when you want to ride as long as the time slot is available. Now, as some of you are well aware, Genie Plus was not well received, and there were a few reasons for this. Number one being it was a paid service that took the place of a free service. And I mean, what even is there to say about that? Why would you be happy about paying for something that was around for free prior? But Genie Plus also required that you spent a lot of time on your phone. After all, you needed to select attractions throughout the day and time slots did fill up. A lot of people also didn't get a whole lot out of Genie Plus because of this, and I'll be one of the first to tell you that the system didn't really work well. In my opinion, I didn't really think it was worth it. I very rarely got Genie Plus as a result. But there were also people out there who didn't like that Genie Plus did not allow you to make selections ahead of time. You couldn't purchase it in advance, you couldn't select what attractions you wanted to ride in advance, and you know, that just didn't go over well, especially with guests who really like to plan out their days at the Walt Disney World Resort. So, needless to say, changes needed to be made, and Disney was well aware of that, and they adjusted accordingly. So what does that adjustment look like? Well, first and foremost, it looks like a rebranding, which essentially means that they're changing the name of things. So, instead of being called Disney Genie Plus, the system is now going to be called Lightning Lane. Lightning Lane is going to be comprised of a multi-pass, which is essentially what Disney Genie Plus was, and a single pass, which takes the place of individual Lightning Lane selections. So right there in the name, it's going to make things so much easier for guests to understand. And I mean, I say this because I hear people talking about it all the time. You know, you need Genie Plus to get Lightning Lanes and then an individual Lightning Lane. It's really confusing, or at least it was. But again, that's going to change. Now, I want to go into some details about what we can expect from this change beyond just the name. But before I get into it, I just want to remind you that in the description box down below and in a pinned comment, you will find a link to information about this via Walt Disney World. I know there are a lot of people out there who have been talking about this, but might as well get the information straight from the horse's mouth. If you want to look at FAQs, you want to stay up to date with any changes or updates that are made to this new service, make sure that you're checking that link because that's going going to be the most accurate information. All right, so we already talked about the change in name, not only of the service, but of the two different elements of this service, the multi-pass and the single pass. But that's really just scratching the surface on the changes. The major change to this service, which is probably going to be pretty familiar to some of you who have been to Walt Disney World before, especially prior to 2020, is the way that you not only purchase this service, but utilize this service. Lightning Lane is going to be very similar to the service that we had with FastPass Plus. You'll be able to plan ahead and make a number of selections, not only what attraction you want to ride, but when, prior to your vacation. So what exactly does that mean? Well, prior to your vacation, you'll be able to purchase your Walt Disney World Lightning Lane Multi-Pass and make 3 attraction selections, not only choosing what attractions you want to ride, but also what times you would like to ride them. And you'll be able to purchase your single pass as well, all ahead of your trip. With the single pass, like I said, it's very similar to the individual Lightning Lane selection, so we're not going to focus too much on that because you're going to choose what attraction you want to ride and when, and that's pretty much it when it comes to the single pass. But for the multi-pass, there are a few more things that we need to talk about. Like I said, ahead of your trip, you can select the 3 attractions you'd like to use your Lightning Lane for, but you're not limited to 3 attractions. Once you have enjoyed the first, you can then make another selection, subject to availability, of course, and you can continue doing that throughout the day. Again, very similar to FastPass Plus. You'll also have some other perks with your Lightning Lane multi-pass purchase, such as the ability to download photos and use lenses, very similar to what we had with Genie Plus. Now, before we go any farther, it's pretty clear to see that Disney is responding to some of the major criticisms with Genie Plus. Being able to purchase in advance and being able to select what attractions and when you'd like to ride them in advance. That's something that we will now be able to do with this new Walt Disney World Lightning Lane, and that's great. But what exactly does Disney mean by in advance? Great question. If you're staying at a Walt Disney World Resort hotel or a participating resort, which in this case means the Swan, Dolphin, Swan Reserve, or Shades of Green, guests will be able to purchase Lightning Lane 7 days in advance of their trip for the length of their stay, up to 14 days. Of course, guests will need to have valid park admission in order to be able to purchase Lightning Lane, whether it's multi-pass or single passes. Now, everyone else, maybe you're a local, you're staying off property, you have an annual pass, you have a date-based ticket, you can purchase Lightning Lane 3 days ahead of your visit. So this does mean that you will have an advantage if you are staying on property, which I do think is great. I do think it's great to add some element of a perk for those who are staying at Walt Disney World Resort hotels, and you definitely do have an advantage if you're staying at a Walt Disney World Resort hotel, because you'll be able to have more freedom with what attractions you want to ride and have more selection, because as we used to see with FastPass Plus, those selections become more and more limited the closer you get to your trip. Now, beyond the changes that we've discussed, much of what we're already familiar with Disney's Skip the Line service is also going to apply to Walt Disney World Lightning Lane, including that you can only use Lightning Lane once per attraction per day, and that you're limited to the number of single passes, formerly individual Lightning Lane selections, that you can purchase per day, that number being 2. So as you can see, lots of changes, moving back to that FastPass Plus system for those of you who are familiar with it. In some cases, no change at all. So it's a little bit of both here, a little bit of adjustment, a little bit of tweaking, but not so much that there's any reason to panic. You know what I mean? But okay, I want to get into some of the FAQs. As a reminder, again, we're just addressing some of the things that not only have I heard you guys talk about, but are also addressed on the Walt Disney World website, which, again, links below. First question that has been on everyone's mind is, how much is this going to cost me? Now, according to Walt Disney World, this is going to have the same dynamic pricing structure that Genie Plus had. What does that mean? That it can vary in price per day. Does that mean that the price will go up? Who knows? Disney has opened themselves up to the ability to do that anyway, whether the system changed or not, because of the dynamic pricing structure, which essentially means that on days when it's not so busy, not popular times of the year, the off season, if you will, it's going to be more affordable than it will be during peak season. We've seen the price increase and back off many times since Genie Plus was introduced, especially since this dynamic pricing was introduced. So I think that we can expect to see that moving forward as well. A lot of people are speculating that this is going to be an opportunity for Disney to increase the price of this service. Whether or not that's actually going to be the case is yet to be seen, but I think that we should always be ready for that. Might not be happy about it, but still got to be ready for it. Next question, does Lightning Lane Multipass include Single Pass? No. These are two separate services or two separate parts of the same service. Multipass allows you to go on most attractions at Walt Disney World. That Single Pass is going to be for those special attractions where you need to purchase the ability to use the Lightning Lane separately. Again, very similar to Genie Plus and individual Lightning Lane selection. Next question, can I purchase Lightning Lane Single Pass and Multipass on the same day? Yes, you can. Again, Walt Disney World Resort Hotel guests can make these purchases 7 days in advance, everyone else 3 days in advance, and you can purchase both Multipass and Single Pass same day. So you can plan out your Disney day in advance, which is going to be super helpful to a lot of you who like to plan your vacations. Also, as a bit of a side note, I do think it's also going to allow you to get more out of this service, which has been a major complaint with Genie Plus, because you just don't know what you're going to be able to get. At least in this case, once you've made the purchases and you've made the selections, you'll know you'll at least get on 3 attractions, which is something that wasn't always possible with Genie Plus. Next question. This is something that comes up all the time. Every time we talk about a skip the line service, is a standby line still available? Yes. As useful as skip the line services are, they aren't necessary, despite what some people say. You're not purchasing a park ticket and then need to purchase another service in order to ride attractions at Walt Disney World or anywhere for that matter. All you have to do is purchase your park ticket and then you can go stand in the standby line if you don't want to pay extra for this service. This is an add-on, not a necessity. Next question, and this is a really good one. Can you use multi-pass and single pass on the same day? Absolutely. You can plan your days accordingly. I actually think that it's, again, going to be easier to do this now than it was before. It's going to give you more freedom, give you the ability to schedule out your day. Of course, just because you plan ahead of time doesn't mean that there won't be some bumps along the way. We can talk more about this in the future when we ultimately get this service and try it out for ourselves. But some of the challenges that we've talked about in past discussions, like how you can be a little bit limited when we talk about dining reservations because of Genie Plus availability and everything, that's going to go away, at least in part for those of you who plan accordingly. Don't worry, we'll get into that some other time. Next question, we kind of talked about this already. How long do I have to wait before I can select my next Lightning Lane with multi-pass? According to Disney, as soon as you have experienced that first selection, you can then go ahead and make another selection subject to availability. All right, what's the deal with park hopping? This is a question that came up on our community page when we first talked about this. If you plan on park hopping, you can use Lightning Lane at multiple parks. The way that this is going to work is you're going to make your first 3 selections at the first park. Once you've gotten to the point where you can make an additional selection, if you have a valid park hopper ticket, you can select an attraction at a different park. Next up, will I be able to modify my Lightning Lane selections? Yes, of course, like with everything else, subject to availability. Now this is a big one. What if I cancel my plans? Now keep in mind you can purchase these Lightning Lanes 7 days in advance if you're staying at a Walt Disney World Resort hotel for the length of your stay. So I feel like this is the thing that people really want to know about, but it's going to apply to everyone who purchases Lightning Lane. First and foremost, like has been the case with other skip the line services at Walt Disney World, Lightning Lane is non-refundable. So once you make that purchase, you've made that purchase. But if you cancel your plans or your plans change, and for whatever reason that changes your eligibility to have Lightning Lane. So for example, let's say you've planned a trip that's 14 days long and you have purchased Lightning Lane for those 14 days. If you cancel or change your plans, maybe you don't stay at a Walt Disney World Resort hotel, you decide to stay off property, your selections that you have made, all your plans, they're subject to cancellation. But if your plan changes and you become eligible again, you don't need to repurchase Lightning Lane for those days that you are now eligible, but you will need to reselect the attractions and time slots that you want. Again, subject to availability. So, I mean, that's just something to be aware of, especially if you're one of those people who likes to change things up last second. The purchase of Lightning Lane is non-refundable and may be subject to cancellation. So you can't just cancel your reservation last minute and still have the Lightning Lane selections that you planned on having for the duration of your stay. That's really important to keep in mind. All right, we've arrived at the end of all the things that I needed to tell you about. Here are some of my thoughts, okay? I know that not everyone's going to be happy with this. Of course not, for a few different reasons. Number one, there are some people who have really dialed in Genie Plus, and now going back to a system that we used to have before isn't going to be very welcome because they like the system we have now because it's a system that they're familiar with. I totally understand where you're coming from. I totally understand that change is not always welcome by everyone. That said, I'm a fan of this change. I'm a fan of FastPass Plus, which is very much similar to what this system is going to look like. I think that for a lot of people, it's going to be the ability to do more at the parks and get more out of their purchase of Lightning Lane, which is something that I think a lot of guests really want and need. Unfortunately, with Genie Plus, there were a lot of challenges, there were a lot of hurdles and a lot of running around that you needed to do. You really needed to be on your phone all the time in order to get the most out of it. And having used Genie Plus and really not felt like it was worth it, because I could get more done without utilizing it, especially because it was so unpredictable, I do think that the change to this new system where you can make selections ahead of time and choose what times you want to ride certain attraction is going to be welcome and is going to give people more freedom and, again, solve some of the problems that these previous services have had. Now, I know another major criticism is the price, and I know there are a lot of people who are like, I just want it to be free. I hear you. Unfortunately, the genie's out of the bottle with that one, no pun intended. Not only does Walt Disney World now charge for a service that a lot of people have openly said they'd be willing to pay for, but so too does every other theme park and amusement park in the country. While I do think that Disney has the ability to use Lightning Lane as a perk for certain guests, maybe staying at deluxe resorts or as part of a package, I don't think we can ever expect to see this service free again at the Walt Disney World Resort. It's just not consistent with what we see anywhere else, and you know, business is business. I don't see Disney backing off on something that they can monetize. I do see them using it as a way to monetize other things or to bring money in elsewhere. Again, having people upgrade their hotels or book packages during less crowded times of the year. So we'll just have to see what that looks like. I also do think that the possibility is there for Disney to raise the price of Lightning Lane. I don't know exactly how they'll do that or what it'll look like when they do. I've often talked about how a price increase of this service would actually have the service working better. I know that a lot of people are like cringing at me saying that, but it's true. With services like this, the more people use them, the less effective they are. And so the higher the price point, the less people will be likely to use it, or the less of it they will sell and still make the same amount of profit. And it'll end up being a better service overall. I know. Go ahead and tell me how much you disagree in the comments down below. I know there are some of you out there who think that that's on the horizon, and I don't really have an opinion about it. Part of me feels like it is, part of me hopes that it is, part of me feels like it isn't. It's honestly anyone's guess. So we'll just have to wait and see how things turn out and wait and see what this system looks like when it does roll out, which is going to happen here on July 24th, 2024. Of course, when this new system rolls out, I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who are going to have a lot to say about how to make the most out of it. And I do think that it's great to get a lot of different perspectives, see what other people have to say, see how other people utilize the service so that you can figure out how to make it work best for you and your family. Like with everything else, there's likely to be a little bit of a learning curve here, but it doesn't have to be like this big catastrophic drama-filled change. And I think that it's important to keep that in mind. Take a breath, take it all in stride, see what other people are doing, but think about how it can work for you. Try not to get too hung up on the way other people are doing things, especially if you don't think that's going to work for your family. Because look, some people have some great tips and tricks, but they're just not going to work right for everyone. So keep that in mind, take a breath, especially when the floodgates open on this new system or this adjusted system here at the Walt Disney World Resort. As always, we'll make sure that we keep you updated and share some of our thoughts with you. Until then, though, I hope that this was some of the information you were looking for. I hope that you enjoyed hanging out with me, sipping on some coffee. I'm about to head in, get my day started. And I hope that you have a great day, wherever it is you are, and that you're not too stressed about this, because there's really no need to stress. I know it seems like a lot, it feels like a lot, but it's going to be fine. Your vacation is still going to be great. Anyway, enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you next time. Bye.